Today we're going to be talking about using habit reversal to decrease physical fillers in public speaking. I'm Travis Curtis. I am a fifth-year graduate student at Ball State University in the Applied Behavior Analysis program. I have worked in ABA for a little over 3 years in various positions, including a registered behavior technician, a clinical support technician, and I currently work as a program coordinator at a clinic in the greater Indianapolis area.
My name is Maddie Freeman. I have been in the master's program at Ball State for 4 semesters now, and I have been working in the field of applied behavior analysis for a little over 4 years. I am a registered behavior technician, and I have worked at multiple centers in a couple different states, and I currently am a program manager apprentice at my current center.
My name is Nathan Powell. I'm a registered behavior technician in my second semester at Ball State in the ABA online master's program.
Hello, I'm Jessica Roberts. I'm in my 4th semester of grad school at Ball State, and I have been at my current clinic for about 3 years now.
Hi, my name is Megan Center, and I am in my 2nd semester at Ball State. I have been an RBT for almost 2 years in the Indianapolis area.
Published in 2015, Using Habit Reversal to Decrease Filled Pauses in Public Speaking focuses on removing unwanted behaviors from speech in order to increase overall public speaking ability and to remove the use of those fillers in the speech. Fillers are nonsensical statements or sounds or even unintelligible phrases that somebody might use, such as when they give a speech or engage in public speaking. Mancuso and Miltenberger were not the first to use behavioral techniques to affect public speaking. Behavioral studies for speech date all the way back to 1975. The original study focused on verbal filled pause behaviors, including the use of the words ah, and inappropriate use of the word like, and in addition, they also focused on tongue clicking, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's placing your tongue on the top of your mouth, making a clicking noise when it drops down. The study used 3 to 5 minute video speeches where the participant had 10 minutes to prepare on their topic. There were, I believe, 22 general topics and then many ABA topics that were separated between the participants. Some of the participants in the study were graduate level students in ABA, so they received the ABA topics. After their videos were completed, they took baseline data on those videos to count all of the filled pause behaviors that were used. And then once that information was compiled, they would move on to what was called the awareness training session. The awareness training is exactly what it sounds like. It is composed of the participant watching their own videos and then being aware of the behaviors that they engage in. In addition to being aware of them, they also counted their own behaviors. And the researcher would take that information and put it against their baseline. Once they put it against their baseline, they had a criteria to see if they could get to 80% awareness through 2 speeches or 100% awareness in 1 speech, which would allow them to move on to the next phase. The next phase was the competing response training. In competing response training, they would give them another behavior to engage in. So for example, instead of engaging in or that person would have a 3-second pause. They would remove the use or inappropriate use of the word like completely. And for tongue pressing, they would simply press their tongue against the front of their teeth and hold. After that point, they would move on to post-intervention. Post-intervention was run 2 weeks out from the study, and that was to make sure that the intervention sessions were successful and to see if they retained the information. As long as they had greater than a 75% reduction from the original baseline, then they could move on through the intervention phase or the post-intervention phases. If they did not, they would have a booster session, and a booster session would look just like the previous intervention session. At the end, the intention was to have a 2-week post-intervention session afterwards, just to make sure that they maintained the skills that they had learned during the study. The study was able to show that habit reversal lessened the use of the target behaviors in an effort to increase public speaking ability. It also showed that they could increase the confidence level of the speaker and reduce the overall anxiety. Some supporting literature. In a survey completed by Montez, Heineke, and Geierman in 2019, they found that skills in public speaking was one of the top factors when an employer looked for new hires. Although it's a sought after skill and it's something that we spend a lot of time practicing throughout our academic careers and our professional careers, it still remains a top fear. Some studies have actually shown that college students report it as one of their top fears, citing it more often than any other fear when they're asked just to recall a fear of theirs. And they even bring it up more commonly than they might the fear of death. Studies have also shown that about 70% of the population has a fear of public speaking, and another additional studies show that if not addressed, that anxiety over public speaking can actually turn into a severe phobia. In an original study completed by Fawcett and Moeller in 1975, they were one of the first to contribute to a behavioral approach to public speaking. This study was able to show that behavioral interventions could work in increasing public speaking skills, but they needed to focus on 2 important factors in order to be successful. The first being that you have to identify good target behaviors. So you have to have clear operational definitions and you have to know exactly what you're going after. So in their case, they wanted to increase behaviors instead of reduce them. And what they were looking at was good eye contact, using appropriate gestures with their hands while speaking, and some other good speech skills that they were able to identify. They also stressed the importance of effective training techniques and how those might work. They talked about how things had to be written and orderly so that everybody followed the same guidelines to improve the integrity of the treatment. And ultimately what they found, which is common for us in a lot of our work, is that behavior reversal plus performance feedback had a significant increase or effect on increasing those positive behaviors. So making sure that they had an opportunity to practice and then in turn giving them that feedback as soon as they could. Mancuso and Miltenberger's study was important for many reasons. First, they were able to take the process of habit reversal and simplify it from other studies that had been done over the past 30 years prior to. They wanted to be able to use habit reversal to increase those skills, but at the same time, make sure that they weren't taking too much time or unnecessary time in treatment. They also proved another point in that when they completed the study, and that was that 4 of the participants were able to move past the awareness training session and past competing response with the correct criteria simply by completing the awareness training session. They also cited in their own study that further research should be focused on reducing the additional phases and just focusing on awareness training because they thought it was effective. So in 2017, Spieler and Miltenberger were able to confirm that you could use simply awareness training in order to reduce those filled pause behaviors and increase speaking ability. They found that it was an available, much better time-skilled treatment that you could use. After that, in 2019, another study by Montez, Heineke, and Geierman also confirmed the exclusive use of awareness as an effective intervention. And they added to that study by saying that it actually was a punisher that they were using. So since it was a punisher, it was a substantially effective punisher. And that's why it was able to reduce those filled pause behaviors simply by using the awareness training. And now I'm going to turn over to Jessica, who's going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the study.
Okay, going on to the purpose of the study. The purpose was to prove external validity through replication of the study using habit reversal to decrease filled pauses in public speaking. Throughout the study, we evaluated the use of habit reversal in reducing physical fillers in public speech. Although the original study was a success, the authors did suggest additional research. Now onto the participants. The participants in the replication study included 3 females and 2 males, ages ranging from 24 years old to 41 years old. The females that were involved were Maddie, Jessica, and Megan, and the males that were involved were Travis and Nathan. All 5 participants are master level students at Ball State University. 4 of the 5 participants reside in Indianapolis, Indiana, while 1 participant lives in Virginia. Participants were interested in this study to see how they can reduce their physical filled pauses with awareness training and intervention. A total of 35 videos were recorded throughout both baseline and post-intervention. Each participant rated their overall speaking ability as average, while rating their frequency of using fillers just above average. Now onto the materials. The materials needed for this study included the following: a smartphone and or a computer iPad, something that had video recording ability, a GymBoss app, paper and pencil, and speech topics. A device with video recording ability was used to record each individual as they gave a speech to have visual results when recording full body movements. Each participant used a GymBoss app to track intervals when taking data for another individual. This app provided consistency among all participants when having the same intervals and time to track data. Paper and pencil were used to collect baseline, IOA, and post-treatment data during the videos. 1 participant provided speech topics to all participants so that no topics were the same when presenting. Now onto the behavior definitions. The target behaviors included were lack of eye contact, hand fidgeting, shifting weight from side to side, saying like, and non-purposefully touching face. Lack of eye contact can be defined as any time the individual looks away from the camera for a duration of 3 seconds or longer. So an example of this may be when the speaker looks to the left of the camera area for 5 seconds. A non-example would be the speaker looks away from the camera for 2 seconds and then looks back at the camera. Hand fidgeting can be defined as any time the individual touches hands together, folds hands together, waves hands while speaking, or any other hand movement that fails to serve as a function. An example of this is the speaker picks at their middle fingernail with another finger. A non-example would be if the speaker holds hands up to use clapping as an example. Shifting weight from side to side can be defined as shifting body weight back and forth between legs more than 1 time in a 3-second interval. A non-example of this would be shifting from right leg back to left leg once within 3 seconds. An example would be shifting weight from right leg to left leg back and forth 5 times in a 2-second interval. Touching face can be defined as any time the speaker lifts hands up and touches face, including eyes, nose, ears, mouth, cheeks, and forehead. An example would be if the speaker reaches up and touches their eyebrow. A non-example is if the speaker signs Papa in sign language by placing his thumb against his forehead to demonstrate. The term like is any time the speaker fills space using the word like or in using it in an ungrammatical way, but not using the term in a simile or as a comparison for 1 or more times. Now going on to data collection. The data was collected through video recordings of baseline by 1 person in post-intervention sessions with data from that same person. Each group member participated once, and each group member was a participant once and observer for at least 2 other members, so 1 for baseline and 1 for IOA. All sessions included 3 to 5 minute speeches on a specific ABA topic that was given to them. Each speech was scored using a frequency with 15-second interval recording system. The rate, which is responses per minute of filled pauses, was then calculated for each session. Now on to Megan for the baseline and design and procedure.
As my classmates stated earlier, the target behavior is physical filled pauses. Just as the original study for baseline, applied behavior analysis topics were randomly generated and assigned to each member. Each group member filled out a social validity questionnaire before intervention and after that included 5 questions. How comfortable are you? How would you rate your overall ability? How confident do you feel? How often do you use fillers? And how anxious are you? In total, we recorded and took data on 25 baseline videos and picked one for each group member to complete awareness training and IOA data on. This goes into my next discussion of awareness training. During the intervention phase, each group member, serving as the participant, weekly met with another group member who was serving as the researcher through an approved online video format to engage in awareness training. The researcher observed the participant viewing their own video and took data on every instance of the participant that could identify their own target behaviors. After we all finished awareness training, the group member serving as the assigned researcher completed competing response training. Once we were trained on that, the researcher engaged in a live view of the participant completing an additional speech. During this live viewing, the researcher immediately provided a prompt at any instance of the target behavior. The researcher prompted for a 3-second pause from swaying, shifting weight, or turning head by stating the verbal prompt, pause, instructing the participant to stand still with both feet flat on the floor and head and eyes facing the camera. Prompt for usage of the word like by stating remove, and for any instance of hand fidgeting or face touching, the researcher stated hands down or fold hands, prompting the participant to place both hands resting at their side without touching their body or folding their hands in front of their body. After the interventions were complete, the participant completed a 3 to 5 minute video speech. The researcher repeated the process of data collection from the speech. Once we all had a reduction equal to or greater than 80% from baseline, competing response training ended. If the participant showed a decrease in the target behaviors less than 75% from baseline, the researcher utilized the booster session. This session entailed an additional awareness training session as well as a live view of speech with prompts from the researcher. Now moving on to IOA data. Inter-observer agreement was collected for 33% of all sessions using an interval by interval agreement method. Comparing the original baseline data against the data collection from the reliability data collector. Data was considered good data if the agreement calculation was greater than 80%. Lastly, the treatment integrity was assessed with both the inter-observer agreements as well as the treatment fidelity checklist. Inter-observer agreement required an 80% agreement in order to qualify as useful data. IOA was determined using an interval by interval method. This required us to divide the intervals that were in agreement by the intervals that were not. This provided the final results. We had to be able to match their data to moving on to the additional phases of the study. Then the fidelity checklist consisted of all steps necessary during the intervention phases of the study. And now moving on to Maddie with the results.
So one of our main goals throughout the study that we ended up getting very similar to from the original study is that we wanted to have an 80% reduction from baseline. And as I stated previously, that we achieved that 80% reduction, and we actually had gotten more than 80%, but our results were extremely similar with the original study. So starting out for baseline, Jessica, Megan, Nathan, Travis, and then myself. Jessica was averaging about 5.67, 13.67, and 14.3 behaviors per minute for her sessions. Megan, who had engaged in 4 baseline sessions, had an average rate of 4.3 9.7, 7.3, and 2.3 behaviors per minute. Moving on to Nathan, who completed 5 speeches during his baseline. He had an average rate of 7.67, 13.67, 4.33, 2.33, and 5.33 behaviors per minute. Moving on to Travis, who completed 6 speeches during his baseline sessions. He had an average rate of 8.67, 7.67, 4.00, 3.33, 4.33, and 6.33 behaviors per minute during his sessions. And then lastly, I completed 7 speeches during baseline. And my average behavior rate was 21.33, 12.33, 7.00, 10.67, 8.33, 16.33, and 15.67 behaviors per minute. So once we had completed our baseline, we moved on to the competing phase. During the competing phase, as it was talked about previously, this was when you would review the behaviors yourself along with a researcher. So during that phase, everybody had hit 100%, which gave us the opportunity to move into the intervention phase. During the intervention phase, you were to engage in a session, and you needed to at least have 75% or more from your original baseline over 2 consecutive sessions during the intervention. During the intervention phase, Jessica had engaged in 0.33 behaviors. Megan had engaged in 0.67 behaviors. Nathan did not engage in any behaviors. Travis had engaged in an average rate of 1 behavior, and I had engaged in an average rate of 0.67 behaviors. Since all of us had achieved that 75% or more, this gave us the opportunity to move into the post-intervention phase. During the post-intervention phase, this was completed no more than 3 days after our intervention. And during that time, everybody had to do another 2 speeches. And with those 2 speeches, you had to have at minimum an 80% reduction from baseline. If you did not hit that 80% reduction, you would have to go back and do a booster session. Everybody luckily had hit over that 80% baseline reduction, and so we did not have to use any booster sessions. So Jessica had engaged in an average rate of 0.33 and 0.33 behaviors during her speeches, her post-intervention speeches. Megan had engaged in an average rate of 0 and 0.33 behaviors. Nathan, again, did not engage in any behaviors during his post-intervention. Travis had engaged in an average rate of 0.33 and then 0 behaviors during his post-intervention speeches. And lastly, I had engaged in an average of 0.67 and then 0 during my post-intervention speeches. Our main goal of this study was to show that habit reversal is a very good and effective intervention when it comes to decreasing those physical speech fillers. And we feel confident that our data, since it's so similar to the studies results, can show that having that habit reversal can be a very effective intervention. So looking at our graph, we have Jessica at the top, then Megan, Nathan, Travis, and myself. We chose not to include the intervention phase on our graphs, which is a multiple baseline across participants design. We chose not to have that intervention phase due to the fact that it was not in the original study, but also because we only had that one data point, we deemed it unnecessary to include it in our graphs. You can see that each person had a significant reduction from baseline to the post-intervention phase, where almost everybody is showing 0 to 0, showing close to 0 levels. In our table here, again, it goes Jessica, Megan, Nathan, Travis, and Maddie. Jessica was averaging a 33.64 combined average rate during her baseline. Megan was averaging 23.66. Nathan was averaging 33.33. Travis was averaging 34.34. And Maddie was averaging a 91.66 average. And this is the combined rate from baseline. When looking at the IOA percentages, everybody had hit over the 80% that was necessary to be able to continue. And as I had stated before, during the competing phase, everybody had hit the 100%, which takes us over to the intervention phase. I have already stated what everybody's average rate was during the intervention phase, so then I'm going to move to the post-intervention. Jessica had shown a 98.4% reduction. Megan has showed a 98.61% reduction. Nathan showed a 100% reduction from his baseline. Travis showed a 99.4% reduction, and Maddie showed a 99.27% reduction. Again, we feel that our data has been able to help us confidently show that having habit reversal can significantly lower the use of those physical fillers when engaging in a public speech. And with a combination of observing your own behaviors, which happened during the competing phase, and being made aware of your behaviors when engaging in them, which happened during the awareness phase, this can help decrease and maintain those low levels of those physical fillers, which again is the same or very similar results that the original study had received. I'm going to go ahead and move it over to Nathan now, who's going to wrap up our presentation with the limitations.
I'm going to talk about the limitations in the study. Our limitations in the study were that, firstly, we had poor interval observer agreement at less than 80% our first time doing our data collection. The reason for our poor IOA data was that not every researcher followed the same form of interval data collection, as some used interval time application GymBoss, which was what the replication design called for, while some attempted to use the timestamps on the videos to determine the behaviors and the intervals. This led to poor IOA data, less than 80% agreement across 12 intervals. Next, once we had reached 80% agreement with all using the same GymBoss application, each participant only recorded one baseline data point before moving on to habit reversal training. So we determined after reviewing the study that this was not appropriate, that we had to have multiple baseline data points for each participant. And so that caused us to have to restart our replication project with some adjustments. We changed from using the verbal behaviors used in the original study to physical behaviors like touching your face or hand fidgeting, among others that we had. So with the new behaviors, we had poor baseline IOA data once again with less than 80% agreement. And this is because the subjectivity of the behaviors. So the purpose of an operational definition is to take something that's objective or something that's subjective and turn it into objective. So our initial run with these behaviors, we had poor behavioral definitions, so we rewrote them, we made more specific and concise. And with this, we were able to collect appropriate data, and we were able to reach the appropriate above 80% IOA data. Another limitation for this study was the fact that performing the videos each time required 2 people to be ready to participate at the same time. For baseline, one person had to be able to provide the topic for the person, and the other person had to be ready to have a 10-minute study period in order to research the topic and then perform a 3 to 5 minute video on the topic. So that's what caused us to need to that was one of the limitations, that you had to have 2 people at all times. Habit reversal training in the form of awareness training and competing response training also required 2 people to meet up virtually as both researcher and participant. So once again, this requires, the other one, you could just send the topic over a text. But with this one, you had to have 2 people meet over a Zoom call or a FaceTime in order for you to complete that awareness and competing response training. Next, our next limitation is our group had to restart the project with only 5 weeks remaining until the presentation date. It took our group 2 weeks to generate the new behaviors and their definitions, perform baseline, collect baseline data, redefine behaviors, and recollect the baseline. It took 1 week to perform awareness training and competing response training. Even with each participant passing intervention in the first session, the 2 final post-intervention sessions were unable to be completed due to time constraints. The first post-intervention training was performed and collected 3 days after passing intervention. Data remained at 75% below each participant's baseline, and the final post-intervention collection will be collected 2 weeks after the first post-examination as scheduled, but we were unable to do that due to time constraints. Your application study speeches were recorded individually and not presented in front of an audience. Speeches were recorded individually, not in front of an audience. Typically, speeches are recorded in front of an audience, so we weren't able to replicate that, and that was the same in the study. And so that was the case with, we were unable to perform our speeches in front of an audience, and that was also led to not being able to generalize because there was no generalization probes connected in our study or in the original study, because we were only recording our speeches in front of ourselves in on our own homes. We weren't able to record our speeches in front of a group of people because that is how it happened. And to close out our presentation, this is our references. Thank you so much for watching our presentation, and we appreciate your time.